You're listening to Bedroom Beethovens, where notable music makers break down stories accompanied by songs and melodies documenting growth through their 10,000-hour journey. And me? Well, my name is Cello, your host.
I am a bedroom Beethoven.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. My guest this week is
House Shoes, almost an ex-producer, DJ, father, record label owner, from Detroit to Los Angeles to the world. Worked with Dilla, Proof, Danny Brown, Guilty Simpson, countless others. A lot of cats in Detroit, Elder Sensei, a couple, globally, few other cats nationally.
AKA the busiest man in quarantine.
Trying to have fun with it, man.
I'ma put it to you like this. I ride the beat. You think my brain's a set of keys? I read a piece of poetry and let it breathe. It's Iggy L, Zion. Man, I apply thorns on the track, apply your poems on the rack and take me home so you can hear some good music. It's vitamins for your dad. The ignorant will not accept. But F that, I'm sick of dropping levels for you devil's advocates and splatter kids inside of your ghetto inhabitants. Too much compromising.
Great episode as I conduct a 30-minute all-killer, no-filler episode with an American, Detroit-born hip-hop producer and DJ who lives and works in Los Angeles, California. The duality of the two scenes was important for his mental health and his growth as a record label owner and entrepreneur. Hip-hop heads in Detroit were equally influenced by all three coasts. That's, East Coast, West Coast, the South. So what you have is a culmination of influences, experiences, and stories. But before we get into that, I have to do a little self-promotion because during these strange times, it's hard out there for a creative. Patreon.com/Bedroom Beethovens is how you support the show, guys. Give a little, get a little. Just $1 or $2, and you can gain access to more episodes, early episodes, swag, and more. Also, the website, the plain website, is bedroombeethovens.com, where you can find all the social media channels spiderwebbed and sewn across the internet for your enjoyment. So if Stitcher ain't your bag, maybe YouTube is, or Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. But last but not least, I'd appreciate it if you liked, comment, and or subscribed. It takes a lot of work to do these. And above all else, I hope you listen and enjoy them. Respect the hustle, friends. And happy early Father's Day to Shoes. Happy early Father's Day to all the dads showing up and doing the damn thing. We salute you.
Coming up is the wise DJ House Shoes. Everybody make some noise for him right now.
Well, this is an important moment for me in the podcast because I have an immense amount of respect for you. And when I had on Kayla Maestro and Juicy the Emissary, in the back of my mind, I was thinking how this was helping street corner music's visibility. Like I'm doing my part to help the culture.
Absolutely appreciate it, brother. I need all the help I can get.
I hear you, but what's funny is and I just want to keep it honest with you out of the gate. Like you intimidated me at first. So when it comes to time to set up this interview, I was like, Cello, don't say any dumb shit. But you know what? I look on my fridge and I look on your fridge, and we both have that same Chuck E. Cheese printout with our kids on it, man. So
there we go. We're
just human beings, man.
Yeah, man. People get intimidated. I'm probably honestly one of the most approachable people you'll ever meet in your life. I just get hot. I'm very passionate, and I'm very passionate about what I love, and I'm also very passionate about things that fit into the opposite end of the spectrum. So I use my words. You know what I mean?
Like Hex Murda. I think you both are kind of in the same vein where don't get on your bad side.
He's a little less approachable than I am. I mean he has been in a wheelchair for some years, so you could walk up to him. He's not going to put you to sleep like he used to.
Well, it's important before I forget to kind of check on you with this quarantine. Aside from the nicotine itches, man, I hope you're doing good.
Yeah, man, I'm good, man. I'm playing it safe. I'm playing it smart. This is crazy times we're living in, and my lungs are compromised from years of smoking blunts and cigarettes, and I actually quit for about a week a few weeks ago, but then I lost one of my OGs back home at the crib. Rest in peace, my man Mike Huckabee. And I went straight to the store to get a pack, man. Just keeping it honest.
I mean, if you try to quit, is there ever going to be a stretch of time where there's not going to be something that's going to make you want to pick up a pack of cigarettes? It's hard.
Right, absolutely, brother. Absolutely. It's a coping mechanism. People don't understand that. It's definitely not healthy. There's worse things you could do, though. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely. And let me tell you, man, when I was 13 years old with my Walkman listening to Extinction Level Event by Busta Rhymes, I didn't think that 22 years later we'd actually be heading towards one.
Absolutely. The funny thing about all that is the shit went down and then he never talked about it ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not one of these, hey, Ja Rule, let's talk about 9/11, but I would kind of like to hear, your thoughts on kind of, seeing the future, but, I'm glad that you're still able to spend quality time with your kids. At the end of the month, I have to put my oldest daughter on a plane to fly her to California for the summer so she can be with her dad. And I'm a bit worried about American Airlines not voiding the middle seats like they promised.
Yeah.
Those flights are packed like sardines.
Yeah, man, these motherfuckers are hungry for that dollar, man. One thing I've definitely learned in the last, 3-4 years is, they fooled us on this capitalism shit. There's a lot of things in life that are more important than a dollar, and I think first and foremost in these days, human lives are much more important than dollar bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it puts things in perspective, man. So I hope your family, my family. I hope we make it through the summer.
Absolutely.
So let's run it back, man. Did you grow up in Southfield or did you grow up in Lathrop Village?
Lathrop, yes, Lathrop Village, which is actually kind of just a small section of Southfield. It's maybe a couple square miles, not that large at all, but part of Southfield, which bordered Detroit on the northwest side, and yeah, that's where I came up. Like everyone knows about 8 Mile from the movie. 8 Mile's the border between the city and the suburbs, and I grew up off of Southfield Road in between 11 and 12 Mile.
See, I grew up in Texas, so my ignorant ass is using that Eminem movie as a portrait of Detroit. But there's no trailer parks in Detroit or 8 Mile for that matter. So I don't know what to believe and what not to believe.
Right, it's a movie. It definitely was based in a lot of facts, but you got to put the glitter on it for the big screen.
Yeah, and what's funny is Southfield is a city that has 70,000 something people, but Lathrop Village has had the same population for 40 years. In fact, more people lived there in the 80s than they do now.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. See, look at you schooling me on my own shit.
Yeah, and you went to high school there. Were you the Beavers back then?
Southfield Lathrop Chargers.
Oh, I think they're the Beavers now.
No, they actually closed my school down a couple years ago. They kind of joined the two high schools. I think everybody goes to Southfield High now, and I don't know what they're doing at Southfield Lathrop, in all honesty.
That's interesting. So do you ever think that when you were like in 5th grade and you get introduced to hip hop, like if that crate of music, instead of having like Houdini and Fat Boys, it had like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, do you think it would have had the same effect? Because you didn't know that hip hop would have resonated with you. Maybe it was just the concept of music on a deep level. And who's to say today that you wouldn't be like Henry Rollins instead of being Uncle Shoes?
I'll take Uncle Shoes, man. Much respect to Henry Rollins. I was never, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny with music. I don't like loud shit. Unless, there's always exceptions to the rule, but I never got into metal. I never really got into rock. And once I was introduced to hip hop, it was tunnel vision, man. And all the music that I love and appreciate came from hip hop, came from me discovering, samples and breaks and all this source material. And I just could never get it. Even with hip hop and with like rap music, I don't like motherfuckers that are loud and obnoxious yelling at me and shit. Like I want you to chop it up with me. Don't rap at me, rap to me. You know what I mean? It's like a conversation.
So if a person's listening to rap and they got like 415s in their trunk, that's not the proper way to listen to hip hop.
Yeah, man. I never understood why somebody is so vested in everybody else hearing their music and then being deaf by the time they're 40 years old.
I agree, man. And if I went as hard as you in high school in music, I probably wouldn't have found too many passionate, like-minded people, but you had people like Olove and a few others where you were able to spread the music around the people that wanted to hear it. I mean, Olove had unreleased joints on vinyl.
Absolutely. That was my first, that's where I got the light bulb over my head. Like, okay, the records are where it's at. That's because I always wanted everything first. You know what I mean? So, let me in the crib one day, and there were records fucking everywhere, and I'm like, yo, man, like this ain't out. What is this joint? Oh, he's got a new joint, and like, it could even be a couple years before the album drops. Back in the day, that they would start leaking out these joints off these records. So much love to my man Love Omari Jones for spiking, piquing my interest and kind of showing me the ropes.
So then you're spinning on your school district's radio station. Is there a bunch of red tape with the principal and the staff, or you had free reign?
Pretty much free reign. It's FM radio, so you can't play dirty versions and shit. The funny thing is, actually, the first show that me and my man Scott did on WSHJ, I played "Squeeze the Trigger," which was the B-side to the Colors 45 by Ice-T. And I thought it was a clean version, but at the very end of the song, he goes, A to the motherfucking K. And I was like, oh shit. And I grabbed the fucking record and I just smashed it on the ground. I was like, we got to destroy the evidence. We got to destroy the evidence, man. They're going to come get us. The FCC is going to get us.
Regardless, I mean, you're the school's DJ, basically, so that kind of gave you your first DJ bug.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So you went to college, but you got kicked out on a charge. What happened?
I got kicked out of Eastern Michigan University, maybe not even 60 days in, for arson.
Allegedly.
Well, it was. I mean, technically, it was. So me and the homies, we were in my dorm room, 416 Hoyt, on the Freshman Hill in Ypsilanti one night, and we had the towel under the door. We had the paper towel tube with the fabric softener sheets in it, and we were fucking blowing weed all through the room. We're actually blowing it out the tube, out the window, but come on, man, that shit don't work. And we all got the munchies, and we're like, let's go down to the cafeteria and get some food. And as we're walking through the hallway, in the dorms, they have the cork boards with all the messages and flyers and the thumbtacks and all that. And I was just on some dumb shit. I was like, hey, yo, I'm gonna burn this bitch down. And I literally lit the corner of a flyer on fire, and it caught fire, and I immediately put it out. Immediately. And unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, there was a serial fucking arsonist that was lighting the fucking boards up in the freshman dorms. I had not heard anything about it. I definitely wouldn't have done that shit if I heard there was. I get a phone call right around Halloween of 1993, and it was the cops, and they asked me to come down to the station, and they immediately banned me from all the dorms. But of course, they want that money, so they allowed me to finish the semester. It was honestly the greatest thing. It was a turning point. You know what I mean? I wasn't in it for that, apparently. And I spent all the remainder of the funds that I had in the account for like room and board and books and tuition and all that. I spent about $4,000 on records over the course of a couple months. And yeah, it's funny how some of the worst things that have happened to me in my life have turned out to be the best things that have happened to me in my life.
Yeah, I don't know too many people that can turn arson into lemonade, but you did it. and then this kind of starts the stint at like St. Andrews. That's the venue where Eminem put ICP's name on a flyer without their permission and started this 20-year long beef. So that venue carries a lot of weight.
Oh, that was our church, man. That was every Friday. You know what I mean? The sermons are going down, and the venue was just, the night was so incredible. 3 floors of fun, it was separated genre wise. The top floor, the Burns room, was, like my man Mike Huckabee and Billy Bob and Michael Geiger, all the greatest like Detroit house and techno DJs played house and techno on the top floor, and it was the cream of those tracks. Same with the hip hop floor. The best hip hop DJs playing the best shit, and then the basement was like industrial alternative, kind of more alternative, but like good shit being, So in turn, you had a very high quality of music being dispersed every Friday. So you had a slightly more than average crowd, like the intelligence of the fans. It was a higher bar. And you got this cross pollination between those three floors where everybody was introduced to all the best shit of that era. You know what I mean? Depending on what floor, what vibe they were on that night. It was incredible.
Yeah, DJ Butter posted a concert flyer from St. Andrews back in 1998, the Cafe Mahogany days. And the lineup was like the Mountain Climbers and Children of the Dust and Proof and Bizarre and Little B. So it was like a blast from the past.
Absolutely.
And when did 31 Flavors enter the scene?
31. So when I was going, I was cool with 31, like end of high school, senior year. And when after I got kicked out of school and I came back to mom's crib, I started fucking with Spot and Beej, Freak, and all the homies. And that was actually my introduction to production, because Spot had this big ass Tascam 4-track, and they had this little like 16-second sampler that ran off of a 9-volt battery, and I would just watch them make great shit. And I was like, wow, it's that simple. Like, you find some drums, you loop them up, and then you find your samples. It's very Beat Miners influenced, I would say. For the verse sections, you would just filter the loop out, and then you would just bring the tops out for the chorus or the hook. And one day I asked him if I could borrow it, and I took it home, and that was the beginning of everything. That was like early 1994.
So, and then also on the night, like, coupled with that story, and then what you told me earlier, how you're able to get music maybe a year or two in advance, you're getting like the Infamous and Illmatic or whatever quote unquote classic albums are heralded in the community today. But you're one of the first people of the general public to hear it, thanks to your hustle at Street Corner.
Absolutely.
Because nowadays, I think a lot of people will listen to like Jay Electronica's album, and if you ask them, they'll say, "Oh my God, it's an instant classic."
Right.
But then you go on Reddit the next day, and they're like, "Well, maybe Jay-Z was on that record too much. Yeah, maybe track 4 was kind of weak. You right." So people are so influenced by the general consensus. But you're a guy who says, "Hey, I'm Shoes. I have an ear for music. This right here, the Infamous. People are going to go crazy on Friday when they hear this." Like you knew.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I was, God bless my mother. She always had music playing at the crib, and it just resonated with me. You know what I mean? And I never really wanted to be listening to the same shit that everybody else was listening to. I knew there was something else out there, and it was just up to me to find it.
Well, let me ask you a question too about, I guess, personal finance and entrepreneurship. Jay Leno has gone on record and said that he hasn't spent a dime of his Tonight Show money. He's lived off his stand-up money, and he's pocketed away all the Tonight Show money. And I think you're kind of in the same boat where you don't live off your art. You live off the day job, the hustle. So do you think that is why rappers nowadays, they're not that good, because they're constantly trying to force the commoditization of their art because they're worried about, hitting the charts and all that?
Well, maybe not even necessarily the charts, but just getting money, period. You know what I mean? You can't do a rent record. You can't just do a record to pay your rent because something else fell through and, oh shit, I ain't got no money and I'm gonna fuck with this dude. The beats aren't really that great, but I'm not really gonna put that much effort into it. I just gotta write like 5 joints. And it diminishes your catalog. People don't understand that. They say you're only as good as the last record you made. Humans are simple people. They're very judgmental. You know what I mean? And I think that definitely stands true. You have to maintain consistency and a very high bar of excellence. Otherwise, they're just going to be saying you fell off. It could be something you didn't even try putting the effort into, but they don't know that. You know what I mean? They don't understand your personal situation. They just hear a weak ass album you put out and they write you off. I'll never do that.
Yeah, I was trying to test that theory because the UFC heavyweight champ of the world is also a firefighter, and he lives off that salary. And I really think that there's something to that, because if he loses, he's not too worried about a cut in pay. He can just focus on being the best without worrying about fight purses or win bonuses, and it kind of frees up your focus.
You only got one shot. We only have one life on this earth, so everything you do matters, and you can definitely take yourself out of the game before anybody else does.
Well, I mean, those lessons, like, you've concluded as a person, a producer, a professional, a businessman, not to surround yourself with like yes men. But what's interesting about that is that's usually a lesson you learn after the fact. So, I mean, did you have any, I guess, firsthand accounts of like a naive house shoes where you were a victim of circumstance?
No, I was always, I was always very very strong-headed with the way I feel about things. I just saw it in everybody else. You know what I mean? It always mystified me that someone whose music sounds like shit thinks that it sounds great. And you know what I mean? You could be your own yes man. It's not even necessarily about the people you surround yourself with. Everybody always wants to be comfortable and in a safe space. You know what I mean? And that's not the way to go. You gotta maintain that shit, man, because oh yeah, it's devastating how people have just taken themselves off the page. You know what I mean?
I mean, I constantly get requests to rep Detroit more on the podcast, but now I'm finding out that nobody really kind of gets along. I mean, Detroit to me is the most realest shit, and so much can change in a matter of years. Like, can you even fathom Charles Hamilton on a Royce record now? It'll never happen.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, man. Like, you can't hold on to. One thing I've also learned is you got to let shit go, man. Like, are you gonna be stuck on that shit forever? I'm honestly completely embarrassed by that entire situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing. Like, I bang on people who act like they're the police now, and I used to be the police. You know what I mean? It came from a place of love and protection, but for years, if you've Googled house shoes, DJ house shoes, that's what popped up. I don't want that to represent me. I've had people tell me online that they just fuck with me because they like the shit that I talk. They didn't even know I was involved in music. And that definitely opened my eyes to what the priorities need to be.
Man, look, I'm so glad you said that, but I think it's only fair that I give you the same platform I gave Esham. I said, hey, look, house shoes. He said hi.
Right.
That's basically all I said. He said, look, I don't have a problem with house shoes, but from his perspective, he feels like you did Ma Dukes dirty. You're in a no-fly zone because all that, But he also said he doesn't have a problem with you. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, you guys are in your 40s now. You're
Right.
There's growth. There's learning. Beefing gets you nowhere. But at the same time, I gave him a couple minutes to address it. I got to do the same for you because that's fair. So if there's anything that you want to say to that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, I fucking love I grew up with those records. Those were some of the first moments that I felt like Detroit had some shit. He was the first dude in Detroit to make $1 million off of rap music. He wasn't chasing fame or money or, you know what I mean? Like corny shit he did what the fuck he did, and he broke ground globally. Like, he started that horrorcore shit. And I always supported the fuck out of him. You know what I mean? Like, the last time I saw Esham was at Fat Beats on Melrose, and it was all love. And all I'm saying is, if you got a problem with me, find a way to holler at me. You know what I mean? Don't put it on a motherfucking record. Like, we're grown. We could talk about this shit as adults. You know what I mean? I was hot off of that My Duke shit, yeah, and I said some really wild shit. I was it was a little aggressive. It was a little too much for some people, but the root of that statement, you know what I mean? Like, Dilla had a perfect catalog while he was alive. He had the most flawless catalog. He only let you hear the music that he wanted to. And that's why his shit is so stellar. And I just think that the value of his catalog is definitely diminished since he left.
You're talking about like on Record Store Day when they release a Fuck the Police 7-inch. They shouldn't be doing stuff like that.
I mean, that's cool. I'm saying that whole shit came off of that box set. You know what I mean? Like, $300 for a box set. I mean, the music at the end of the day is all that matters. You know what I mean? But 4 10-inches and a floppy disk, and half of them didn't work for $300. That's I didn't see that as the way to go. But I've had my discussions with people back in Detroit over the years, and it always comes down to everybody saying, that's his mom. You got to let him do what she want to do. And I consistently said no. Like, God bless that woman. James came out of her. You know what I mean? JD came out of that woman, and she raised him. But we weren't going over there fucking with my Dukes. None of us were. We were over there fucking with Jay and watching him build his legacy. And his legacy is the priority.
I think we said our piece, and Detroit, it's all love. And anytime I can get someone on the podcast from Detroit, it's a win. And look, you've been in LA for like a decade now. So the knee jerk reaction I think a lot of people have is why even leave the Motor City? Like, was it necessary for street corner music to kind of get off the ground, or
No, it wasn't. It was necessary for House Shoes. It was necessary for Michael Buchanan because I always, I had a vested responsibility in my city, in our community, and I could never prioritize myself above that. You know what I mean? I was constantly connecting dots and sharing my platform with others that I felt deserved it, but I would never prioritize myself. So I'm pushing everybody up, but I'm staying in the same spot. And I had been at the top of a glass ceiling for a very long time. And there was really nothing else I could do, man. It was just, it's time for me, for lack of a better word, I had to get selfish. And I've said this in a few interviews. I don't understand why there is such a negative connotation to the word selfish when all it means is that you put yourself before anybody else. You can't help anybody else properly unless you have prioritized yourself and put yourself in the best position to be able to help others. So I never traveled outside of Detroit. I was always be like, why would I go DJ somewhere else? We do this shit here every week in our, Buddha Lounge, St. Andrews, Northern Lights, whatever it is. We do this shit. I'm taking care of my community. Why would I go somewhere else? And then I moved to LA and I've been to over fucking 40 countries playing those same records globally, always.
if we're talking about what you've done for Detroit, I would say Elzai eventually becoming a member of Slum Village probably had a lot to do with you passing the Out of Focus EP over to Dilla.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a blessing, man. Like I was just on the phone with L yesterday and I was like, it's crazy how the thought came to me because we talk about it all the time and I talk about it to other people. We did not know what the fuck we were doing when we made that record, but we knew exactly what we were doing.
It's a criminal because it's like his best work and it didn't really see a wide release. Kind of like when Bugz passed in the 90s and
Yep.
it started because of some water gun bullshit and it's so senseless. And then later the world couldn't fully appreciate electric Kool-Aid acid testing because of some dumb shit. And I'll be real with you. I had young RJ on the podcast, and not to air him out because I do have some integrity, but I had a whole section in there about Elzai that he wanted to be cut because Elzai, his tenure with Slum Village wasn't good. Like you know the story, so I don't need to get into it. But I guess I don't know Elzai. I hope he's in a good place, and I hope he's finding his footing in hip hop because the Slum Village. I don't know if that was it.
No, L definitely has much more to offer us, and I think he's sitting on a couple records right now. He's got one record that's actually fully produced by Georgia Ann Muldrow, and then he has another record that's produced by this cat J.R. Swift, and they're both really fucking good. We're actually going to do a little kind of podcast thing where he sent me a folder with a bunch of like 16, 17 of his features for other people, and he's going to like break down those verses and those situations, and that'll be a lead into those projects.
That's awesome, man. And the last thing that I want to cover is street corner music itself. I had on Juicy the Emissary, and we discussed the mentality behind getting music out to as many people as possible. But like back in the day, when you're selling Fat Cat records, you were negotiating with Fat Beats for them to buy as many records as possible. I don't know, 8,000-9,000 records. But nowadays, Timber is limited to 200, and Big Shoes, like the orange black splatter, is limited to 100. So is that a sign of the times because streaming culture like wrecked that, or is that advantageous to your label to do that?
Well, sometimes I'm very selfish once again with what I release. I don't really take a lot of submitted projects, and Juicy actually has 2 on the label, so he's batting 100 because I like to make the records myself. I like to have you send me all your music, and I kind of curate your project. But I had actually first become familiar with Juicy. It's interesting because I heard Timber on SoundCloud probably like 3 years ago, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. It was like 15 minutes. It was seamless. It was gorgeous. And I hit him up. I was like, yo, man, give me another 15 minutes and we got a record. And he was like, all right, I'll do that, but let me send you this shit I just finished. And he sent me the Kmart Chopper shit. And that's one of the greatest beat tapes just ever. It's fucking incredible. It's the translation of that source material into that seamless, incredible work of art that he made. I'm so grateful that that's just a part of of the history of street corner music. The number wise with records, you know what I mean? I put out a lot of shit. I put out a lot of records. I try to put out as many as I possibly can. And, there's budget shit involved, and sometimes there's risk factors. And at the end of the day, my primary goal with street corner music is, in the most simple of terms, it's just existence. There's no rollouts. There's no bells and whistles. There's usually no videos. There's definitely no marketing and promotion aside from me, you know, out of town, drunk after a party with a group of kids around me, and I'm telling them all to send me their email address so I can just send them the whole catalog and they can just spread that shit.
Well, I mean, I take notice of that, and if I'm taking notice, I'm sure thousands of other people are taking notice. So, I mean, street corner music is the label, and if you own a Crosley suitcase player, that label, this podcast is probably not for you. So,
absolutely not.
So, street corner. SCM.com or streetcornermusic.bandcamp.com or slide on the fatbeats.com and check out the discography. Stro Elliott, Juicy, Mo Dirty, Twami, Rhetmatic, they've all been on the podcast. And I mean, these are spiritual records. It's honest music. It's no bullshit. So please support. And I mean, the Big Shoes record is dedicated to the kids. I mean, can you imagine if ICP came out with a record and dedicated that shit to their kids? It wouldn't make sense. So this is real, spiritual, heartfelt hip hop. I want everyone to support it.
I appreciate you so much, brother, for this, man.
All right, yeah, and I'm just a guy in Texas who loves hip hop. I started a podcast in an effort to just assist those who I respect. So the fact that you came on here, I'm going to assume that respect is mutual. So a real man-to-man, heartfelt thank you for your time and your willingness to come on.
My man, salute all day to you, brother.